Welcome to another edition of University of Kentucky's Working Parent Network Workshop Series. This month, we're going to be talking about balancing parenting styles and child rearing goals. Parent, Balancing parenting styles and child rearing goals. And what does that look like in your life? So I asked this: do you know your parenting styles? How does it impact your child? How is it impacted by your personal child rearing? Is your parenting style effective? Or are you looking to make some adjustments? How do your children respond to your parenting style? Do you want to improve your connections with your children? So sometimes small adjustments can help us to improve our connections with our children, improve our parenting styles, help us set effective goals, and actually reach those goals. So I invite you to listen up, take notes, and identify how you parent your child. What are some of the practices you employ? And do you make adjustments based on your child's temperament? And I also encourage you to keep in mind that parenting is a journey. We are all on this parenting journey, and your parenting styles and your parenting practices will look a little different based on who you are, your background, your children. It'll look differently sometimes based on your experiences, how many children you have, the ages of your children, the stages of your children. But I implore you again to just kind of dial into this presentation and listen out for tips that help you on your journey to effective parenting. So let's start with this quote. I try so hard to gentle parent, but I don't do it all the time because sometimes I'm the impatient parent, the reactive parent, and the struggling parent. Sometimes I'm the anxious parent, the exhausted parent, and the overwhelmed parent. But I'm also the committed parent, the loving parent, and the forever trying parent. This quote's by Gemma Douglas. I love this quote. I find it very encouraging. I find it's something that I think most parents can identify with. Most parents can probably say that they try so hard, and sometimes they feel like they're doing a great job, and other times they feel like they don't. Sometimes you may feel like you're the impatient parent, the struggling parent, the reactive parent, the anxious parent, the exhausted parent, the overwhelmed parent. But also, you're the committed parent, you're the loving parent, you're the forever trying parent. So I really appreciate this because this really encourages us that we're all on this journey doing the best we can one day at a time. So in this workshop, we do have a few goals. Goal number one is for you to identify your parenting style and your parenting practices. So when you do that, you're going to reflect on how your child is responding to your parenting practices, and you're going to reflect on if the way you were raised or reared is impacting how you parent, the parenting style that you use today. You're also going to compare your parenting style and your parenting and your child's personality or temperament. So that's a goal for you today. First, identify your parenting style, and then think about your child's personality and temperament and kind of compare how that's working. And also identify and define your parenting goals. There can be a lot of different type of goals that we can set as parents. So we're going to talk a little bit about what type of goals that you want to identify, what type of goals make sense for you based on your child's age and development. And then, some basic categories of types of goals could be social, academic, relational, emotional, and life related. And then another goal for this workshop is to identify some parenting goals and style adjustments to make that will help you to be a more effective parent. So what type of adjustments can you make to help you be a more effective parent? And that's a personal decision that we all get to make for ourselves. And it could be very small adjustments or it could be big adjustments. But I encourage you to be courageous and make those adjustments. It could be that you make a little bit at a time, just to on your journey to be a more effective parent. So when you think about parenting, there's a lot of different things that impact you as a parent. First of all, your parenting characteristics, who you are, your child's characteristics, and then the contextual and social cultural characteristics. Those are the external things impacting how you parent, who you are as a parent. So let's start with your parenting characteristics. We all bring us, right? We bring us as the parent. We bring our personality, our developmental history, our mental health, our beliefs, our values, our knowledge as a parent, whether you are a new parent or you want a parent of one child, a parent of multiple children. um, you know, you also bring potentially your gender and your age. So that's who you are, who you bring to the table, your personality, your mental health. Are you anxious? Are you tired? Are you upset? Are you happy? Are you joyful? Are you go with the flow or what have you? Your personality. Are you more introverted or extroverted? You bring all of that to your parenting. And then, of course, your child's temperament, the child's characteristics, their gender, their skills, their age, their developmental age, their behavior, their health. The child is a part of that parenting equation. So it's not just you, it's you plus the child plus the external characteristics of like your social network, your work setting, your neighborhood, your culture, your school. So like who is impacting you? What is impacting you? Are you the person that like to read books or listen to podcasts or um, go to workshops, or you have friends or family members? Different people are impacting, and that's the kind of external piece that impacts your parenting. So it's good to know what impacts your parenting. We're talking about parenting styles, we're talking about parenting practices. So you want to think, what's impacting the type of parent that I am? Okay, there's me, there's my child, and there's these external things. So when you think about parenting styles and practices, parenting style is the emotional climate in which your child is raised. So when you think about the emotional climate that you raise your child in, that is the space they live in. So let's just say you are an authoritative parent, authoritative or authoritarian, whichever type of parent, or permissive parent, or uninvolved, or whatever type of parent you are, that's you're creating that climate for your child. So if you're an authoritarian parent, as an example, like the more strict, rule-driven parent, then their child is going to live in that environment where they may feel like, I can't mess up. I have to get everything right. I have to do everything right. Or mom and dad rules go. I don't have an opinion. I don't get to share. They don't listen to me. It must be done this way, their way, all the time, every time. So that may be that you're creating that climate in your emotional climate in your home where the child may feel like, I can't mess up. And then if you're like the other extreme end, the permissive parent, where everything goes and you're more child-centered, and what the child wants they get, and there's kind of very little rules or no rules, or appears to be no rules, and that's the climate. Or if you're very permissive and let's say you make rules but you never stick to them, you're creating that climate. The child already can say, well, we can do whatever, or if they say they're going to do something, they don't, or if the rules don't actually follow through. So you're creating that space. A parenting practice is a specific action that that you use to parent your child. So for example, you may be an let's say you're an authoritative parent, but if you're an authoritative parent and the practices that you use in your being an authoritative parent is what the specific actions that you take. So parents can adopt the same, for example, authoritative parenting style, but use different practices or specific actions based on the individual child's temperament. So parents that have multiple children know that they can have two or three children, and all the personalities are different, the interests are different, the skill levels are different, their temperaments are different, their personalities are different. And so although you may be an authoritative parent, you may have rules and guidelines, but be flexible. How you employ them with each child based on their temperament, kind of the best way to approach is one way to think about that, or the best way to implement is one way to think about that. We consider that goodness of fit. And that's a good thing to consider. So when you're thinking about the four parenting styles and their effects on your child, there's the authoritative. Let's start there. The authoritative parent is often demanding. They have expectations, but they're also warm and accepting. So these are the parents. They have expectations, they have rules, but they are presented, or they are there for the child. The child feels like this is a space where I maybe can tell my parent how I feel about the rules, or I can have an opinion, or I can have a bad day, and it's okay. So the authoritative, this type of parent, they solve the problems together with the child. So they may ask the child for their opinion or their input on things. They ultimately make the decision, but they help the child solve problems. They set clear rules and expectations, they have open communications, and then they oftentimes follow natural consequences. And that's how children learn and grow, through natural consequences sometimes. And so then you have the authoritarian parent, who oftentimes is demanding, but sometimes may come across as cold or unaccepting. So this is a parent that may be like, my way or no way, here are the rules, and they won't change. They're not flexible. They don't adjust based on the circumstances or the situation. They're the same for everyone potentially. And so the authoritarian parents sometimes, they're very parent driven. They make the decisions. They're the boss, and that's how it is. They set strict rules and punishment. Like, so if you don't do this, here's the punishment. There's one-way communication with little consideration for the child's social, emotional behavior needs. So they're pretty much, here's what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. And they may not consider, for example, if one child is a little more sensitive than the other, or just they're in general, they're just sensitive. Or this one child may be a more go with the flow and less planful. Or this child may be more outgoing and less outgoing. They're just like, here's what we're going to do. And then you have the permissive parent that's very child driven in their parenting style. Their parenting style is very much so kind of, what does this child want to do? How do they want to do when they want to do? So it's pretty permissive. The child gets to do a lot of what they want to do. And sometimes there aren't rules, or the rules are not often followed or maintained. And so they rarely give or enforce rules. They overindulgent to the child, and sometimes they just want to avoid conflict. So, for example, if the child starts to cry or whine or complain, they're just like, here, do whatever. Yes, you can have everything, because I don't want to hear you complain or whine or cry. So that could come across in some ways as warm and accepting, because they're like child-centered, but then it's undemanding. And so the child sometimes may not know where the rules are, because they may be steadily changing. And sometimes that may not put the child in a space where they feel like there's consistency, or that they know exactly what to expect, because things are always changing. And then there's the neglectful or uninvolved parent. The neglectful or uninvolved parent, they provide little nurturance or guidance, indifferent to the child's social, emotional. They're just kind of doing their own thing, and the child is just out there. So they may come across as cold and unaccepting and undemanding. So they're just kind of neglectful. And the interesting thing about this one is that a person might be neglectful but be present. So let me explain that. You could be a neglectful parent emotionally, socially, psychologically, but be present in the home. Like, you're there, but the child can't talk to you, or they can't bother you, or you're busy doing other things all the time. Or they're trying to talk to you and you're doing something else at the exact same time. Like, you never like just focus on them. And so that could be neglectful and uninvolved, and feel like you're absent to the child. And so that may make them feel like they're not getting nurturing that they need from you. So that's one to be mindful about. You may say, well, I'm present, I attend things, but you're not there. So that's something to think about. So when you think about some examples of authoritarian parenting, here's a few. And I'm just sharing these examples so that you can really listen. And sometimes it's hard to place these things. It's hard to think about, what do you mean by authoritarian? So this is these are a few examples. Give harsh punishments to perceived rule violations. So this is the parent that when they even think the child is trying to be defiant or trying to not do what they said they're going to do, they're really harsh. They come down hard on them. And then they make big family decisions without input from anyone else. This is the person, again, when I say go, I make the decisions, I run the house, and that's it's just very no bargaining there. They exert complete control over their child's study habits. Again, this is just an example. That could be that they say you will study for 2 hours every day and that's it. Or you will study at this particular space in this particular way and with these particular tools, very much so their way or no way. They may berate the child for poor decision making. So your children will make mistakes. They will do their learning, they're growing. Sometimes it may even be something that you have told them over and over again not to do, or is not a good idea, and they do it anyway. So the authoritarian parent may be the one that just really drills the child, say, you did this and I told you not to, or why did you do this? And so that's just one way to say authoritarian. You didn't do it my way. Authoritative parent, you may be authoritative parent if you keep high expectations but remain sensitive and forgiving. So being an authoritative parent does not mean that you don't have expectations or rules, because you do. But it does mean that the expectations, you're a little more open to, okay, um, being flexible. And you also are open to being sensitive to maybe situational things. So if a bedtime, for example, is 9 o'clock, you may stick to that most of the time. But if, for example, the child has homework they're trying to do, you may let them stay up for 30 extra minutes to get the homework done. And because you're trying to be understanding, you also maybe because of that, you're forgiven. You have expectations, but the child breaks something. And so you're like, okay, it was a mistake, or let's just clean it up. There's consequences, right? You break something, you clean it up, or you mess something up, you clean it up, but it may not be very berating. It's a learning opportunity. And then they may have reasonable rules, but remain strict to adhere to them. Have rules and remain strict to adhere to them. Value individual freedom, but teach responsibility about consequences. So you're telling your child, be you, be authentically you, have your own mind, have your own thoughts, be your own person, but there's also consequences for your actions. Help decision making, but not to go by whims. Help decision making, but not so basically you're helping your child make decisions, good decisions. Here's another example for authoritative parenting, and that we're going to spend just a little extra time here because this is where the experts tend to say this is usually one of the better parenting styles to employ most of the time. Now, keeping in mind with parenting styles, you will employ as a parent different parenting styles possibly at different times. So you may not be one strict parenting style. You may employ a combination of some of these parenting styles, and it may be necessary to employ a combination of these parenting styles based on your child's temperament, based on your child's age, based on their development, whatever is going on based on the goals you have set for this child or set for your family. There may be times when you need to be a little more strict on certain, like learning the timetables, for example. They may need to write them, every other day for 2 weeks just to really, math is one of those things you have to do it to learn it. Spelling, you have to read, you have to read to learn to be a better reader, those kinds of things. So that may be a space where you may come across as being a little more authoritarian because you're insisting that they read something every day or every other day or one book a month or something like that. But that is for their good. So that's where one of those you have to kind of, based on what goals you have as a family and for your child, you get to determine, you may have to go in and out of some of these parenting styles. And maybe you're a little more permissive if you have like a teenager. You need to kind of loosen the reins a little bit and let them learn and grow, and they're developing to their own individual adult. And they They like what they like and they don't like what they don't like. And maybe they don't want to go to every activity you want to go to, and you allow them not to go to every activity. And that may come across as a little permissive, and it is, but it's necessary at that stage of your child's life. So when we talk about these parenting styles, we want to keep in mind that different parenting styles make sense, um, different stages of your child's life sometimes. And that's a good way to think about it. So this last little slide on authoritative parenting, it reminds us that there's some pros and cons to this one. And it says this is when the parent provides a nurturing and warm environment while simultaneously providing firm limits and boundaries. So pros: provide consistent rules and expectations, balance input and ideas from the parent and the child. So it's not just one way. The cons to potentially authoritative parenting style is that it can be a trial and error to balance both the discipline and the independence for the children. So like the example I was just giving about working with a teenager versus, maybe a 3-year-old, maybe you give the 13-year-old a little more leeway than the 3-year-old because they need to, that's developmentally where they are. But the 3-year-old needs a little more strictness. Maybe their bedtime is 8 o'clock. That's it. There's pretty much, they need all of that sleep. The 13-year-old may have homework to do, and so they can stay up a little longer and they can manage themselves the next day with an hour less of sleep. So that's something to think about. And then another potential con is new strategies will need to be implemented as emotional needs change with developmental needs. So you can call that a con. Basically, it's just saying you have to adjust as you go. So, you have to have these firm guidelines and boundaries, but you have to be also open to adjusting them as you go. So here's something to think about, and you're welcome to pause the video if you want to and just kind of think about this. But here's some questions. Which parenting style or styles do you use? Which parenting styles do you use? Which one do you want to use? So the parenting styles again: authoritarian, authoritative, permissive, neglectful. And then some expert says there's actually a fifth one that's called the snowplow, the snowplow or the helicopter parent. You probably, it's a more common phrase you've heard. These are the parents that move all obstacles out of their children's way, or they hover and they're like micromanage all aspects of their child's life. That sometimes is considered like the fifth parenting style. So, which parenting style are you? Which one do you want to be? Where are you? And think about your child's development and stage of life. Which one did your parents or guardians use when they raised you? And how does your family of origin impact your parenting style and your parenting practices? You also want to think about, does your parenting style vary based on your child's personality? Think about your children. Which parenting style works best for each child? And I'm not saying you need to have a different one for each child, but I'm just saying, as you think about your children's temperament, do you need to adjust and lean a little more towards one versus the other based on that? Or do you have one parenting style, such as authoritative, and you use different actions and how you use it with your children based on their temperament and their personality and their ages and stages? So this is just something to think about as you are striving to be the most effective parent on this journey of parenting. So let's talk a little bit about parenting goals. Parenting goals. What are parenting goals? What are goals? Goals are pretty much something that you want to accomplish or something that you plan to accomplish or you're striving to accomplish. Goals can be short-term or long-term, and short-term and long-term can be defined in a variety of ways. Someone may say a short-term goal is 1 month. Here's what I'm going to do this month. That's a short-term goal. Someone else may define a short-term goal as 1 to 3 months. Someone may even say my short-term goal is getting through this week. So, or getting through this day, that's a short-term goal. And then there's long-term goals. Long-term goals oftentimes are at least 6 months or a year or 3 years or longer. So a long-term goal, it really depends on who you are and what you're trying to accomplish. You might set goals that are short-term or long-term. So when you think about parenting goals, something you want to accomplish, oftentimes as parents, we set goals. Sometimes they're obvious and sometimes they're not obvious, and I'm calling some of these hidden goals. When they're not obvious, it could be something as simple as you want your child to have good manners, so you require them to say please and thank you and wait their turn, or you teach them how to clean up behind themselves at the table or put their toys away when they're done with them. You're teaching them, you want them to be responsible, you want them to be clean and tidy. So you may not even have thought about, I want them to be clean and tidy, or I want them to learn how to take care of themselves or manage their time better, or what have you. So there are some hidden goals, and then there are some very obvious goals, such as learning how to tie your shoes, learning your ABCs, learning how to drive. Those are very obvious goals. Learning how to cook, learning how to do your own hair, or pick out your clothes, learning how to put your clothes away. There's all kinds of very obvious goals that we set, but oftentimes we set goals and they help us to kind of stay on track and focus on things that are important to us. So your child learning how to tie their shoes is important. And it could be important because they need to know this skill because they're going to daycare or they're going to school and they need to know how to take their shoes on and off and tie their shoes themselves. So that's an important goal. Potty training. If you're potty training and they're going to preschool or daycare or something, and by a certain age, they want everybody potty trained unless there's some sort of developmental concern there. And so that may be an important goal at that point because I need you potty trained because I need you to go to this particular activity or summer camp or what have you. So there's those types of things. And then keeping in mind with parenting goals, parents are sometimes overwhelmed by day to day responsibilities. And because of this, sometimes parents will prioritize their short term goals over their long term goals. And you're like, what do you mean by that? How do you prioritize short term over long term goals? So let's say your long term goal is for your child to learn to tie their shoes. Okay. But you find yourself tying their shoes for them every morning as you rush out the door. Now you really do. It's important. You really do want them to learn how to tie these shoes. You've shown them how to do it a few times, but they still don't know how to do it. Or they can do it, but it takes them a really long time. It takes them 5 minutes where it takes you 10 seconds. So you may tie them just to quickly hurry out the door. That's you prioritizing your short-term goal of getting those shoes tied versus the long-term goal of them learning how to tie their own shoes. So that's just an example. So, three types of parenting goals. There's parent-centered goals, there's child-centered goals, and there's relation-centered goals. Now, none of these are inherently good or bad necessarily. Like you probably gonna use parenting goals and child-centered goals and relation-centered goals. So, parent-centered goals are focused on things the parent wants to accomplish. The child-centered goals are focused on something you want the child to accomplish or know how to do, a skill you want the child to develop for their sake. The relation-centered goals are goals that is beneficial for your relationship. So for example, again, the parenting-centered goals, they focus on parents' needs such as obedience and compliance. People with parent-centered goals are often concerned about control. In the short term, they want to change a certain behavior to meet their needs. So a child-centered goals, you're trying to teach your child lessons and values so that they can show up and be able to function effectively in society oftentimes. So you're really focusing on these child-centered goals, these good manners, for example, or things, skills that they need to learn and develop. They need to learn how to eat by themselves so that they can go to school and eat by themselves. That's a child-centered goals. So parents with child-centered goals tend to be concerned about teaching children important personal or social lessons. They like to instill core values and teach them social rules for the child's future benefit. And so the relation-centered goals concentrates on fostering close relationships with harmonious connections among family members. So parents that set relation-centered goals, we all set relation-centered goals, but these goals are generally responsive, warm, empathic. They're concerned about the child's feelings and what the child wants and needs. And they're also more accepting, and they want the child to understand. They want to understand their child. So they're really, they have these goals, but when the child says, I don't want to do it, that's a parent that's going to say, tell me why, or why don't you want to do it? And they're going to listen to the child. And the child sometimes may say, I just don't like it, or that bothers me, or I don't like it there because people are mean to me there, or whatever. But you're listening, and you oftentimes learn a lot. Also, keep in mind that you may approach your parenting goals differently based on your parenting style. That's a very good point to keep in mind. If you are authoritarian, permissive, neglectful, whatever type of parenting style you employ most of the time, you're going to approach your goals that way. So, for example, back to the tying the shoes example. If you're an authoritarian parenting style, you may really insist that this child learns how to tie their shoes. And you may be the person that says you will sit here for the next 15 or 20 minutes practicing or trying to tie your shoes and you will not move. And the child may say, I'm hungry, I need to go to the bathroom or whatever. And you're like, nope, you will sit there and you will tie those shoes over and over again because you need practice. That may be authoritarian. The permissive parenting style person may say, after like a minute, okay, don't worry about it. Or I'll just buy you shoes with Velcro. Or we'll just keep your shoes tied and you can slip them on and off without tying them, having to untie them and tie them. So there's different ways you see this played out. So here's the big picture when it comes to parenting goals. One of the things you're always striving for is to make goals that are relation centered, so that you can strengthen your relationship with your child. You can have a positive relationship with your child. You want to have a healthy, close relationship with your child. And you want a parent child centered relationship. And then when you think about parental love is powerful. Parental love doesn't work as fast or as direct as reward or punishment, but it works a lot better in the long run. So the parental love is characterized by warmth, affection, care, comfort, concern, nurture, support, acceptance, or simply love that a child can feel from their parents. I love that point. This child can feel the love from you. You may be an authoritative parent and you have firm, strict guidelines, but you couch it with warmth and empathy and consideration. So that child can feel that love. Yes, you have rules. Yes, you have expectations. Yes, you have guidelines. But there's comfort in it. You're still kind to the child. You're still loving towards the child. So that parental love is very powerful. So here's just some examples of good goals for parents. Some of these may resonate with you. You may say, oh, yeah, that's one that I have, or that's one I'm working on, or that's one I'm going to add to my list. So developing mutual respect, allowing open communication and bidirectional feedback, spend more time in self care. Self care is a good goal for parents. Take care of your child's mental health. Be observant and find out what's going on with them. Sometimes taking care of your child's mental health can be something you do at home, just by observing them and saying you need a break from this homework or for this task. Or let's not do this today, let's do this tomorrow because I can tell you're tired, you're frustrated. It could be just those everyday types of things, or it could be something a little more substantial where you identify that you need to take your child to see a therapist or a psychiatrist, psychologist, someone that's in a mental health field, mental health clinician of some sort, and you may get them some professional help. So, other good goals for parents would be to build trust so that your child will not be afraid to come to you with problems or concerns or anything going on with them. You want to be supportive and foster independence at the same time. So, you want to encourage them to grow up, basically. You want to foster independence. You want to encourage them that you can do it. You can do anything you put your mind to. And you want to catch them doing good things and reward them and compliment them. You want to nurture critical thinking skills. You want to study more about child development. And something as simple as watching a video like this and learning more about parenting styles and goals and practices it's a great thing to do. Find ways to improve your parenting skills. You want to use positive reinforcement. You want to turn a challenging situation into a learning opportunity. So we all, as adults and children, have challenging situations sometimes, but you want to help guide your children, whether they be 5 years old or 15 years old or 25 years old. You want to kind of help guide them, like, okay, what are you learning from that? And sometimes you may not use that exact word, but you may want to say, How are you going to approach that differently next time?" Or how can you make sure this doesn't happen again? Or whatever it is, there's ways to help them learn from the different experiences when there's challenging situations. Foster resilience and tolerance for distress. Read books together. Form healthy habits together. It could be eating healthy, could be taking walks, could be running, could be bicycling. Healthy habits, turning your TV off at a certain time, not having your phone at the dinner table, all kinds of healthy habits, right? You can also become a positive role model. So here's a little information about setting parenting goals. Everyone's parenting skills and experience levels are different. So, your skills are going to be different, your experiences are different if you have one child versus three children. If you have a 1-year-old versus a 10-year-old, those are going to give you some different years of experience and different situations you've had to work through. So I encourage you definitely when you're setting your goals and you're thinking about your parenting styles is please don't fall into the comparison trap. It's great to ask for advice from other people. It's great to seek out advice or watch podcasts or read books or what have you and get some good tips and suggestions. But please don't allow that to let you fall into the comparison trap. But just take away the good that you can and implement the tips and strategies that work for you and your family and your child. Also, set and approach goals differently based on parenting styles and your child. And also determine what your parenting goals could be. In order to do that, you want to evaluate what you want to accomplish and what you want to improve. So, this little short list is just a possible list of things that you may say, I would like to improve in this area. So, do you feel like you yell too much? You can't get your children to listen? You wish your children would fight or squabble less? Let's just say they have siblings or cousins or at school, even in the neighborhood. Do you feel like you have no patience left to deal with your children or just no patience in general? Do you wish there was less screen time in your home, like less on their phones or their devices? Do you feel like you never have any time to connect with your children because you're so busy and everybody's so scheduled and so many activities? If that's the case, you may need to cut some of the activities. It's okay to do one activity per season instead of two or three activities per season. It's okay to not do any activities in certain seasons of your life or certain times that you have different things going on. It's okay to ask for help for other people to assist you with the tasks and projects that your children are involved in as well. Also, do you feel like you never have any time for yourself to recharge? Talk about self-care. All parents need downtime. That's why bedtimes are your best friend. Having healthy, consistent, reliable bedtimes can really help parents to decompress, recharge, reset, do what they need to do, go to bed, get a nice good night's sleep, hopefully, and get up the next day and do it again. But sometimes that consistency of just having a simple, consistent bedtime for your child gives you space to now breathe. Do you feel like you're constantly cleaning up after other people? So, with these parenting goals, once you know what you want to fix or improve or change, then you can set some parenting goals that make sense for you and make sense for your child, for your family. So, here's some parenting tips for setting goals with your child. So, this one is talking about not just you thinking, this is you saying, let's set some goals together. So, choose a goal that is just out of reach. It's something that maybe they have a little skill for, but they need to build a little bit more. So goals should be attainable, but they should require some effort. So it's attainable. They can maybe do it, or they can do it with some effort, with some help, with some coaching, with some guidance. And then break it down. What is the goal? Break it down by steps. Give them steps. Do this first, do this second, do this third, do this fourth. Is it something that has to be done in a particular order or not? Make sure you're very clear about that. Also, let your child own it. Let them own the goal. Let them, create some of the opportunities. Show support and role model for your child. Reward accomplishments and offer encouragement. And then reflect and revise as needed. So let's just say you're working on multiplication tables. You have an elementary school child, and you've talked to them about setting these goals, and maybe you bought a poster board with the multiplication tables on it, and you review with them once a day or every other day, or you have them write down, this week we're working on the 2s and the 3 timetables. And your child can get let's say you have cards, and they can look at the card that says 2 times 3 and then try to remember. And if they can or can't remember, they flip to the back and they go, oh, 6. Okay. So that's a little bit of them owning it themselves, right? So there's lots of different examples here. Maybe they're trying to learn how to ride a bike, maybe they're needing to learn how to get organized or play an instrument or learn a new language. Whatever it is, there's ways to set goals with your child. Here's something to think about when it comes to bedtime routines. Bedtime routines. When you think about bedtime routines, there's definitely some things that are helpful, and there are some things that are not helpful at all. So here's a few quick items to think about. And I'm sharing bedtime routines in this particular presentation because it's so common for so many parents. They have concerns and challenges with maintaining a bedtime routine that works for them. And not saying that this doesn't need to be adjusted, because it always does. With anything in parenting, you always have to be in a space where you're ready to evaluate, revise, adjust, be flexible as needed. So here's some do's. Do be consistent. Include dental hygiene. Basically, teach your children part of your routine, brush your teeth. Keep it short. Make sure it's a short routine. It's not something that's going to take 45 minutes every night. It should be maybe like 10 minutes max. And then make it age appropriate. What makes sense for your child? What are some things that they can do or can't do or need to do or don't need to do? Offer limited choices. Establish a bedtime routine early in their life. When they're like a 6-month-old and a 6-year old, make sure the bedtime routine has been established early in their life and not like late. It's hard to implement it later when they're 12 years old. You can still do it, but it's just a little tougher because they've gone so long not having it. So in that case, you may have to do it in stages, or you may have to kind of slow walk your way into it. Also prepare for a little crying. Be prepared. Depending on your child, every child is not going to cry. Some children are going to get into bed with no issues and go to sleep. Some children may cry and they want to do extra things. They want you to read the 3rd book to them. They want to give you the 5th hug of the night, or they want to get a drink of water for the 2nd time, those kinds of things. Some will stall, so just be ready for that. Make the room dark and comfortable and quiet and silent and clean and neat. And think about the room setup. Is the room set up in a way that's conducive to the child? Is it welcoming to them? Are there personal items in there? Be aware of night terrors and sleep disorders. This is one to know about. Let's just say you have these great routines, but also keep in mind if is your child having a lot of nightmares, or is there another biological reason why they just cannot sleep? So just be aware. And then here's some don'ts. Don't allow stimulating activities before bedtime. So don't let them be on devices 2 minutes before they're supposed to be going to bed. Maybe 30 minutes before they go to bed, or minimum 15 minutes before they supposed to go to bed, or an hour is even better. Maybe that's the time they can read, they can do something else, but no devices. Um, don't think poor sleep habits will just go away. So habit is the key word here. We're trying to create some good habits when it comes to your bedtime routine. It's not going to just go away. You have to help them create them. Don't create poor sleep association. So, don't make them think, oh, it's time to sleep and now it's time to clean my room. Like maybe cleaning their room is something they do at least an hour or 2 hours before they go to bed. 2 hours is better. Not like it's bedtime, now clean your room. Maybe that's not a good thing to associate. Don't drag it out. Set this is the time. Let's do our three things we're going to do and go to bed. Don't give them caffeine or any, kind of sugary items, of course, before bed. Try not to transition abruptly. Give a little transition time. And that time may be, again, 10 minutes. It doesn't have to be 30 minutes. So try not to do abrupt transitions if you don't have to. There may be times when you have to. Maybe you're coming in from an activity and everyone's kind of rushing around, and you're having to maybe take baths and get clothes for the next day or get your backpack together. You may be kind of moving some days, but try not to do that all the time. All right. And then don't allow use of electronic devices close to bedtime. So here's something for you. We've been talking a lot about goal setting and parenting styles and parenting practices and your child's temperament. As a parent, you bring your characteristics, your child's characteristics, your external characteristics. All of that makes up your parenting. Everyone has different styles. You may be using a combination of things. You may have one that you lean towards more than others. You may have certain ones you use more for some children versus other based on their child's temperament. These are just things to think about, okay, when you talk about your parenting. So I encourage you to think about what are some goals you can set as a parent for yourself, for your child, for your family. And in summary, how does your parenting style work with your child's characteristics or temperament or personality or, interest even? How does your parenting style work with that? And this is just encouraging you to pause and think, am I asking my child to do something that is so contrary to their personality that is causing us to have a lot of conflict and friction in the home and in our lives? And it could be that maybe I need to make some adjustments. And then, are your parenting goals parent, child, or relationship centered? When you're setting these goals, is it something you're insisting on doing? Is it the right time for them? Is it the right length of time? Are you doing it the right way that makes sense for your child? You may be. I'm just asking you to pause and think about it. What can you do to increase the harmony and balance in your child rearing? So, are there small adjustments you can make? Are there big adjustments you can make? You may come up with 4 or 5 things you can do this month, or over the next week, I'm going to do this one thing. Just think about it and get started. So, as we close, I encourage you to remember that parenting is a journey. We are all on this journey doing the best we can, one day at a time.